How I outlived my partner to own it all. When Rick and I started Prime Forge Apparel, it felt like the world was ours to conquer. He was the dreamer, the charmer who could turn a pitch into a standing ovation. I was the strategist, the builder who made sure we had solid ground to stand on. Together we were unstoppable, or so it seemed back then. One night, sticks with me, we'd just botched a deal with a local retailer. Our pricing was off, and the buyer walked. I was pacing the garage, running numbers aloud, trying to figure out where we'd gone wrong. Rick tossed a basketball at me, grinning as it hit my chest. "Relax, man," he said. "We'll fix it. You and me, we're gonna take over the world." I shook my head. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one buried in spreadsheets." He held the ball out like a peace offering, his grin widening when I finally took it. "But seriously, you're the smartest guy I know. Just stop overthinking and trust me." Back then, I envied the way Rick could believe in anything, even failure. But over time, that belief felt more like a blindfold than a gift. It was easy for him to brush off the risks. He wasn't the one calculating them. He shot the ball toward the old hoop nailed to the garage wall, missing by a mile. We both laughed, and for a moment, the weight in my chest eased. Back then, it didn't matter if we missed. We'd just laugh, grab the ball, and try again. Failure didn't feel permanent. It felt like something we could fix, together. Rick had this way of making every problem seem smaller, every challenge feel surmountable. He believed in us so completely that sometimes it felt like I didn't need to. Years later, that trust started to feel misplaced. The leased Lamborghinis, the designer suits, the endless stream of parties. It wasn't about the business anymore. It was about the image. "Rick, we're overextending," I said, during one tense budget meeting. "Flipping through our latest financial report, we need to rein it in." He leaned back, waving me off. "Relax. People don't buy products. They buy success, and we look like winners." I wanted to argue, to make him see that winning wasn't just about appearances. But Rick always believed the show was the game, and maybe that's why I knew, deep down, that I'd be the one to finish it, whatever that meant. Rick's grand expansion plan, Prime Forge stores in every major city, was the opening I'd been waiting for. "We'll be the next Nike," he said, sketching out ideas on the whiteboard, his enthusiasm electric. I ran the numbers and saw the risks, but when I pitched it back to him, I made sure to sweeten the projections just enough to keep him hooked. He grinned at me, the same way he had in the garage. "We've got this, man. You and me, unstoppable." What he didn't know was that I'd already secured a private investor. The deal went down in a sterile downtown office, the air heavy and cold. The lawyer slid the contract towards me, the thick paper cool under my fingers. I thought about the garage, the way Rick's laugh used to echo off the walls as we packed shirts into boxes. I thought about the $100 bill he'd held up like a trophy. Back when we believed the world was ours, the pen felt heavier in my hand, like it was trying to pull me back. For a second I saw it, the two of us back in the garage, packing shirts, laughing at how much we didn't know. The words rose in my throat. "Stop. Let's figure this out together, like we always do." But then, I thought about everything I'd risked, everything I'd sacrificed to get here. I opened my mouth, the words hanging there like a bridge I was too afraid to cross. For a moment I thought about walking away, leaving the papers unsigned, telling Rick the truth. But I knew once I started to speak, there'd be no going back, and maybe I wasn't ready to lose the dream. even if it meant losing him. I stayed quiet, swallowing the words like a bitter pill. I signed anyway. The expansion bled us dry. Rick, desperate to save it, poured everything he had into keeping us afloat. His savings, his credit, his pride. I let him. When I finally offered to buy him out, I made it seem like mercy. The board's concerned, I lied, my voice heavy with fake regret. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything. Rick sat across from me, his shoulders slumped. His hand hovered over the pen, trembling. He tapped the pen against the table, his hand trembling, before letting out a breath and signing his name. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper felt like the end of something I couldn't name. "Are you sure this is the only way?" he asked, his voice small, almost childlike. His eyes searched mine, desperate for a hint of the friend he thought I still was. "It's still something, right?" he added, his voice catching. "What we built, it's still worth something. We'll get through this, right? Maybe this is just a reset, a way to start fresh." He glanced down at the floor, his shoulders slumping further, like the weight of the papers had finally settled on him. For a moment he looked like he wanted to say something else. His hand lingered on the doorframe, his fingers tightening, like he was holding on to something invisible. But then he let go and walked away. 2 years later, I sold the company for $15 million. The mansion is too quiet, the kind of silence that sinks into your thoughts and pulls you back to places you'd rather not go. I've tried filling the space, artwork on the walls, music in the background, the hum of a flat-screen TV, but none of it stays. No matter what I do, the silence always seeps back in, heavy and unavoidable, like dust that refuses to stay swept away. I popped the cork on a bottle of champagne, the sound sharp in the emptiness. The bubbles fizzed and popped, the only sound in the cavernous room. I raised the glass but didn't drink, setting it down untouched. The glass sat there catching the light, the bubbles already starting to fade. I watched it until the fizz was gone, until there was nothing left but flat champagne in an empty room. I sat down, staring at the empty chair across the table. Outside, the city glowed, alive and distant. Sometimes I think about that garage, that curb, that $100 bill Rick held like a trophy. I think about the way his laugh used to fill the space, making even the failures feel like stepping stones. Back then, even failure felt lighter when Rick was around. Rick had this way of making every problem seem smaller, every challenge feel surmountable. He believed in us so completely that sometimes it felt like I didn't need to. Without him, even the smiles feel hollow, especially the victories. What legacy? A name on a product? A pile of money? Or is it just a broken friendship and an empty chair at the table? I built an empire by screwing over my friend. But what's an empire without someone to share it with? I used to really believe that winning meant outlasting everyone else. Now I wonder if I'm just another kind of loser.